Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. A few months ago, I uploaded a video called The Hardest Weapons in Splatoon 3, which a lot of you really seem to enjoy. However, I did notice one comment that appeared way more frequently than the rest, which was, I should make a video discussing the exact opposite, the easiest weapons in Splatoon 3. I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit hesitant to make this video, because I know that some people can be offended when others call their weapon easy. But with the way I'm ranking these weapons, which I'll explain in just a second, I think everyone watching will have a fair understanding without any feelings being hurt. But first, as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, so in the hardest weapons video, I made it clear there that I was deciding the weapons based on how hard they were to play at a competitive level. But for this video, I'm not gonna do that. Instead, I'm mainly going to be factoring how easy the weapon is to pick up and learn, assuming you already have a decent understanding of the Splatoon basics. So in other words, I'll be ranking these weapons based on how easy it is to go from never using the weapon to becoming an expert with it. Now, of course, that's not the sole criteria, because I'll be factoring in some other things too, such as how easy it is to be effective with the weapon. Take the arrow spray for example. Yeah, this weapon is really easy to pick up and understand. It's a generic shooter that paints really well. But assuming you're playing the ranked modes, most would agree that it's pretty hard to be effective with the arrow spray, just because it's such a weak weapon. Yes, you could make a case for splat zones on certain maps, but you see my point. Oh, and just like last time, I did ask the Splatoon community for their opinion on this matter, and a lot of people chimed in. So after looking at all of the replies, I'll be factoring those into this list along with my own opinions. Oh, and one final thing before we get started, I made the decision to omit both the Splattershot Jr. and Splattershot from this list, because, well, duh. Obviously those would be on this list if they were allowed to be, and those weapons taking up 2 of the 5 spots would be kind of lame. Oh, also, just remember, everything on this list is just an opinion, so please don't get your feelings hurt. Okay, now that I've laid everything out for you guys, let's get into it. At number 5, we have the Octobrush. The weapon is just all around very easy to pick up. The weapon has decent damage, range, and paint, but most importantly, its mechanics are very easy to understand. I mean, those of you who have both used and faced an Octobrush before, you know what I'm talking about. You don't really have to aim with this thing. Just position yourself near someone and spam that ZR button. And as I said before, the range on the Octobrush isn't actually that bad, so you can sometimes get away with mediocre positioning. If you're a newer player, the Octobrush is also a great pick because it can be very strong in lower level lobbies. This weapon, alongside a few others, tends to rely on taking advantage of poor enemy positioning and awareness. And in lobbies with newer players, these skills are still being developed. Along with the fact that this thing really doesn't require any sort of aim, you're gonna get a lot of kills. Now, against more experienced players, you might struggle a bit more since you'll need to be very good with your positioning. Regardless though, the Octobrush is very easy to understand and use. Between the two kits, the Nouveau variant is probably easier since Inkstorm is just a deployment special, but learning Zipcaster with the Octobrush honestly isn't that bad. In fact, if you're trying to learn Zipcaster, I've heard many people say that the Octobrush is the best weapon for that. Next up at number 4, we have the Custom Blaster. Yes, I'm talking about the Custom Blaster variant specifically. You could make the argument that the blaster as a main weapon is easy to learn in general, but the kit of the Custom Blaster takes its ease of use to a whole nother level. But yes, main weapon wise, it has a huge damage radius, making it pretty easy to aim with, and a fairly quick fire rate to complement that. While point sensor might not be the best sub weapon, it is cheap and spammable, and it can still provide a lot of value for both you and your teammates. But now we get to the real kicker on this weapon, the special. Triple Splashdown might actually be the easiest special weapon in Splatoon 3, from an inexperience to value standpoint. You can quite literally just be fighting someone, pop the special out of pure panic, and guarantee yourself at least a trade. And that's assuming you're fighting a somewhat experienced player who knows how to shoot down a splashdown. If you're in an inexperienced lobby, you will rack up kills with triple splashdown, because people just won't know how to deal with it, on top of all of the kills and assists that you'll be getting from both the main weapon and point sensor. Trust me, you could be a newer player or someone who just doesn't have a ton of experience with blasters and still get an insane amount of value with this weapon. But despite how easy it is, the weapon is still really fun, so it has that going for it at least. Number 3. Clash Blaster. Okay, so I think Clash Blaster is probably the least surprising thing on this list. From what I've seen, this is the weapon that seems to be most commonly considered brainless, ever since Splatoon 2. Now, I personally wouldn't go as far as to call it brainless, but the weapon is very easy to quickly pick up and understand. Come on, you've all faced one of these before. It doesn't need to aim. It's a blaster with an insanely fast fire rate. Just get right up close to someone and hold down that ZR button. Killing people around walls or under ledges is also quite easy. Now yes, it's true. The range of the Clash Blaster is quite poor, so you might have a tough time if you're facing a more midline heavy comp. Its damage is also low, so if you're not landing directs, getting splats can take a decent amount of time. But again, for the criteria of this video, I don't think anyone can argue that the Clash Blaster isn't easy to understand. And like I've already said before, using this weapon in lower level lobbies will typically result in success. The weapon heavily punishes players who lack awareness and aren't great with their movement. Oh, and we should probably talk about the kits too. The vanilla kit is very straightforward and solid with Splat Bomb and Tri-Zuka, one of the best kits in the game probably. The Zuka can even help against midlines and backlines, which the main weapon would normally struggle with. While the Neo kit is a bit worse, Curling Bomb and Super Chumps are pretty easy to get the hang of. At number 2, we have the N-ZAP. Now I know what you might be thinking. There's probably a multitude of shooter weapons that could take this spot, but after putting in some thought and also seeing what the community had to say, I really do believe that the N-ZAP is the most simple shooter out there, while still providing an insane amount of value for any team with little effort. It paints extremely well, it's a lightweight weapon so it has great mobility, its accuracy is good so it's not hard to kill with, and its kits are very simple and very straightforward as to what the weapon's role should be. Suction Bomb is arguably the best bomb in Splatoon 3, and the N-ZAP is definitely one of the better tactical weapons in the game as well. It's just a really solid weapon that can be great for beginners, because while the weapon is primarily supportive, it has the ability to be aggressive too. If you ask me, it's one of the best weapons for learning the fundamentals of Splatoon, and it's good even at higher level play as well. Oh, and the other kit, while not as good as the vanilla, is still a solid pick for newer players. There's not really anything difficult or hard to understand about Auto Bomb or Super Chump, so you shouldn't have any problems there. But just use the N-ZAP 85, trust me. Now, before we get to what I consider to be the easiest weapon in all of Splatoon 3, I first wanted to go over some honorable mentions. I know that there are plenty of weapons that could be considered for this list, and trust me, it was really hard to narrow it down to just 5. So here are a few weapons that barely missed the cut. Luna Blaster. Honestly, the reasons why people say this weapon is easy is similar to the Clash Blaster, but the difference is that the Luna Blaster can be much more deadly in an experienced player's hand. Plus, the damage radius of the Luna Blaster is actually larger than the other 2 blasters I mentioned in this video, meaning you'll have an even easier time aiming. I do think that the Clash Blaster and Custom Blaster are slightly easier to just pick up and start playing, largely because of their kits, but not by too much. Splat Roller. While this weapon does require a bit more practice than everything else I've said on this list so far, once you just understand the basics of its mobility and different attack modes, the Splat Roller is pretty forgiving. It has a very wide and lenient hitbox, especially after the buff it received a while back. The Curling Bomb can be great for mobility, and in a non-competitive setting, running Ninja Squid on this weapon will make racking up kills quite a breeze. It's also one of the best big bubbler weapons in the game, since you just have so much control over people entering your bubble with the super wide hitbox. 52 Gal. Some of you might be surprised to see this weapon in the honorable mentions and not on the actual list. Well, to be honest, as much as I hate fighting 52, I don't think it's the easiest weapon in the game. For starters, Splash Wall does actually take some time to understand if you've never used it before, but more importantly, the main weapon does require a bit of skill to get maximum value out of. With the 52 Gal, you want to repeatedly dip in and out of the ink while fighting because it resets your RNG. Multiple weapons work like this, but it's especially important on the 52 Gal because the RNG becomes horrible if you're shooting for a long period of time. This is sort of an advanced skill that definitely takes some time to learn, so that's why I personally don't think the 52 Gal is one of the top 5 easiest weapons in the game. However, even without doing the tech I just mentioned, it does still get away with some pretty insane kills. Plus, you all know how much I hate the 52 Gal, so I had to find some way to throw it onto this list. Fuck that weapon. Okay, now that the honorable mentions are out of the way, let's get to what you've all been waiting for. What do I consider to be the easiest weapon in the game? Honestly, I don't really think this should be too much of a surprise, since I constantly see many people calling this weapon drop dead easy, but for the sake of this list, my pick for the number 1 easiest weapon in Splatoon 3 is the Tri-Slosher. While this weapon is yet another example of something that doesn't require precise aim, it's amplified by just how fast it can kill. It only takes 2 sloshes to kill a healthy opponent, and just look at how fast this is. It's so ridiculous. Plus the hitbox is wider than most other sloshers, and its range can be deceptively long. Oh, and don't even get me started on some of the angles this weapon can get. Yeah, it's true that all sloshers can take advantage of flicking over ledges and curvature like this, but again, the Tri-Slosher just kills so darn fast, it's borderline dumb. This weapon is such a menace on maps with a lot of inkable walls and curvatures, such as Macomart or Humpback Pump Track. Regarding kits, the Nouveau kit is certainly easier since it has a very clear supportive playstyle with the Tacticooler and Fizzy Bomb. However, the vanilla kit can serve as a nice aggressive alternative, but Inkjet does take some practice to get the hang of, so for the sake of this video, I'm mainly referring to the Nouveau kit. Alright, we've reached the end. Those are what I consider to be the easiest weapons in Splatoon 3, with the help of the Splatoon Twitter and Blue Sky communities as well. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy, it would really mean a lot if you guys gave the video a thumbs up and considered subscribing if you haven't already. And also, tell me down below what you think the easiest weapon in the game is. I know there's going to be some people that disagree with my list, and that's fine, but I'd love to know what you think. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here, but once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.